What up, world? How are you? I'm so excited to make this video because if you see that light behind me, it is the sun setting, and today is the last day that I will be 38, and tomorrow I'm going to be 39, and I'm excited to take a little bit of time and share my testimony at this point because my testimony is always changing, and for most of my adult life I did not have one. And the testimony that I had when I was younger just consistently faded to the point to where I was pretty much blind and deaf spiritually, and I had a heart that was very hard. It was nearly stone, and going through this journey and coming to a place to where my spiritual sight and hearing are being restored. My heart is going from a hardened heart that was nearly stone to a heart of flesh, like is promised in the Bible, and feeling that and experiencing that. I want to share that. I want to help other people know what the difference is. And I've spent a lot of time pondering so that I can do that. Like, how did God do it? How did he take me from where I was to where I am now? And I realized that there's a 4-step process that I keep cycling through. And currently I'm, diving as deep as I can into the 4th step, which is surrendering my heart to God. And I know that I'm not surrendering all I have. I know that it's not even possible. I don't even understand what parts of my heart aren't open. But God does. And I know if I keep going to him and surrendering all that I can and keep praying and asking for him to show me and humble me in more places so I can fully surrender my heart, then he can heal me more. And but before I got to a place where I could surrender my heart to God, I had to come to a place where I trusted God enough to surrender my heart to God. And before I could trust God, I had to come to know God. And before I could know God, I had to stop judging God, because I spent so much of my adult life judging God, and all it did was cause me to run from all things religion and run from God and never take the time to come to God personally and get to know him for myself, to get to know him for who he really was. And I've mentioned this before in my testimony prior. When I shared my testimony that last time, I was really relating to Eve in the garden, because when she sinned, she didn't sin because she ate of the fruit. I realized her sin was when she chose to believe the serpent's lies to be true over God's truth. And when she did this, I now realize that as she chose the serpent's lies to be true, which i.e. Satan, she started to see God from the lens of the serpent. It put a veil between her and the true character and true glory of God. And you have to remember that God made the world before he created Adam and Eve. So they had to have faith in God too, faith in knowing what he said was true. And there's a whole dimension there that I really never thought about, especially, as a kid or reading through stuff. It wasn't until I really started pondering stuff that I started to realize that. But when I see that when Eve chose the serpent's view, his lies, she started to see God from his lens, and her entire world changed around her. She went from living in perfection to having decay and death and pain and having children and watching Cain kill Abel, watching cruelty and all kinds of things, plants die, all kinds of things die. Her relationship with God, her relationship with Adam, her relationship with the entire world around her, her children, everything changed once she took the lens and view and lies of the serpent as truth. And I realize and know very deeply that I did the same thing for most of my life. And we're born into sin. Wasn't created in perfection and then born into a world that is seeing God from the lens of the serpent. And I know that I did the same thing. In the beginning, it started as me, in my early 20s, making some choices that were against my faith, and I judged myself, and then I eventually judged religion, and then I eventually judged God, and then I just kept running from all of it. I didn't want to know. I just didn't want to deal with all of it. And as I did that, I realize now that I just kept clouding and getting a crazier image of God. And I saw God as someone who was judging me. I saw him as someone who was going to punish me if I didn't act the way I should. I saw that if I did it the Lord's way and I was obedient, then he would love me. But if I didn't do it his way, then I would end up in a lesser degree of glory or burn in hell for all eternity. And I did not want to believe in a God like that. I did not want to have anything to do with that. But as I picked up the Bible and started studying Jesus' teachings for myself, as I read his words for the first time in my life at the age of 37, and I started really studying him and the things that he said and his life and his death, I started to come to know him. And I used to pray for, because one of the biggest things when I was, there were many things that Jesus said that either confused me, i.e. his parables, which I've spent a lot of time studying. There were things that he said that just kind of were unexpected and threw me for a loop. And then there were some things that he said that were clear, and one of them was, judge not, that ye be not judged. And I knew, especially in my past life, I was pretty pretentious and I was a snob, and I wanted to be in the top percent. I wanted to make the most money. I wanted to be the most attractive. I wanted to, all these things. I wanted to, just rise to the top of humanity, basically. And I wanted to be above others. And I knew very deeply that was talking to me. I had a lot of room to where I was definitely judging people. And I used to just pray, like, Lord, please help me stop judging other people. Because, I'll just go out anywhere and just, anyone I see, I was very visual. Anyone I see, just naturally judging people. And I would pray, Lord, please help me see people the way you see them. Please help me love people the way you love them, and help me overcome these judgments. And it took me a long time, but it wasn't until I really connected the dots of Jesus's life and his death that I was able to really start to let judgments go. Because it was when he brought, and if you've watched my YouTube videos, I've brought this story up twice, but it's so important, and it's such a key for me in untangling that mess. And you have a chain that's just balled up in a mess. It was key for me to getting that giant mess untangled. And it was when Jesus taught, judge not that ye be not judged. And the Sadducees and Pharisees brought the woman caught in adultery to Jesus to try to force him to judge her. They tried to force him to judge her the way humans judge one another, the way humans cast our thoughts on what someone should or should not be, or what they should or should not be doing. We don't know the heart, but Jesus did. And they brought her to him to judge her and to punish her to death. The punishment for adultery was death. They wanted him to judge and punish her to death. I can't say that enough. And he didn't. He wouldn't. Because Jesus knew, judge not that ye be not judged. And he knows what happens in the heart of someone that judges, which is why he would never do it, because Jesus had lived a sinless life and he wanted a perfect connection with the Father, who is love, because God is love. Jesus saved the woman caught in adultery from human judgment and from human punishment. He saved her life from the shortfalls of humanity. And he showed what the judgment of God really is. Jesus showed in what he did with that woman that the justice of God is in salvation. It is in the choice. It is in the truth. Jesus showed the truth of God's character, saved that woman from the Sadducees and Pharisees and the people judging her. He said, "He who is without sin, throw the first stone." Jesus is the only person that has ever lived that is without sin, and he is also God. He is the only person that has the ability to judge anyone, and he did not judge the way humans judge. And he who has seen me has seen the Father. Jesus shows us who the Father is. He saved her life, showed the truth of God. God is in the work of healing and in the work of salvation. And he left her with the choice to go and sin no more. He saved her life and left her with the choice of what she would do with her life, how she would move forward from that point on. And so many stories in the Bible are left open because the choice is left with that person. It's not God's decision what we choose. He gives us that freedom and that privilege. So that's like, once I came to realize that, it was like, whoa, God isn't out to judge me. He isn't out to punish me. He isn't out to kill me. It's sin. In Romans 6:23, it says, the wages of sin is death. It is sin that kills. When I see God from the lens of the serpent, that cuts off my connection to the life of God, which is where I draw my life from. He is my creator. He is the source of my life, and God is love. It closes my mind and my heart to love. When I accept Satan's lies to be true, it shuts my mind down, which closes my heart to God. And that is how my heart hardened and how I kept growing further and further from God. And as I judged God, I closed my heart off to love. I would judge someone, it would keep me from getting to know them. I would judge God, it would keep me from getting to know God. And all it did was harden my heart and close me to love and to infinite growth and infinite wisdom and infinite knowledge. So, and then the Sadducees and Pharisees didn't learn this lesson. They kept going to try to find a different way to catch Jesus, a different way to try to prove him not to be the Son of God, even though he was consistently showing that he was. And and in his death, the culmination of everything comes, because in his death, the Sadducees and Pharisees took it to the next level, and they brought religion and combined it with the state. They went to work with Rome in the judgment and punishment, the human judgment and punishment of Jesus Christ by crucifixion. And they went and got the state involved and the church involved, And then the law, human law, said it was okay for people to crucify anyone, but especially the Son of God. I can see on the cross so clearly now that everyone that participated in the death of Jesus was denying the truth of who Jesus was, and they were closing, as they denied the truth in their mind of who Jesus was, they were closing their heart off to the love of God. And as their hearts hardened, Satan came in there and allowed them to go and harm and hurt and torture and murder through crucifixion Jesus on the cross. And while Christ saved that woman from human punishment and death, he did not save himself. He freely gave himself to human punishment and death, even though he was God and could have stopped it at any point, and so could have the Father. But the work of the Father and the work of Jesus were in salvation and in truth. And as Jesus was raised up on that cross above the world, hanging between heaven and earth, it shows the truest example, the fullest example of the love of God. God had all power to stop that, but because of salvation, Jesus willingly gave his life to show the truth and the character of God. And everyone down on earth, all of the people participating in the judgment, in the human judgment and punishment, shows the truth of the fallen nature of humanity and what comes when the heart shuts off to the truth and love of God. And I, before coming back to this place, was right there at the bottom of that cross with everyone else, judging Jesus, judging God, and I was only killing myself. I was only losing my own faculties and slowly dying as I shut off my connection to my relationship with God and the source of love and life in my life. So I'm so grateful that I finally come to a place to where I see that. I see that sin is when I believe a lie that's keeping me from seeing God for who he truly is, and he is love. And the more I look to Jesus, the more I study him, the more I see what love is. The more I grow in love and come closer to God and am able to love, and the more I build my relationship with the Lord and grow in love, the more love I have to give my neighbors and the people around me, the less I judge. And I know now I don't want to judge anyone, because when I judge people, it is closing me off. It is holding me back. And as I do that, any work of salvation, when I judge someone, stops in me and it stops with me. It is not my place to judge anyone. It is only my place to learn to love. And humanity in its fallen state will never be capable of judgment, because judgment and punishment are completely void of the only true power that there is, which is love. So that's where I am on that part of the journey. And now that's the culmination of where I was in my last testimony up till now. And now I'm in a place where I'm connecting to Adam's fall, because I really didn't understand it for a long time, because Adam didn't fall through believing the serpent's lie. He fell because he loved Eve so much. He loved Eve so much that he didn't want to lose her. And he chose to make, and he believed God at his word that if they ate of the fruit that she would die, and he didn't want her to die and him to live without her. So he chose to eat of the fruit with her. And when he made that choice, he didn't. So this is where I felt that I don't know if he was in the place in the journey where he just didn't know God well enough to know that he is love, or he didn't trust God enough to know that God is infinite and he knows everything. He knows the beginning from the end. He not only knows my life, he knows the life of every single person around me, and anyone that I'm even able to connect with through my testimony, through Facebook. He knows those connections that can happen. And I know that the more I trust and surrender my life to God, the more he can openly guide my path. But Adam must have not understood that yet, because he made a choice on his own, and he didn't go to God first and tell him about Eve. He must have been scared in some way that if he did go to God, she would die and he would lose her. There's another point there that I want to make, but I don't want to get into that side tangent yet. But I realize that when Adam made that choice on his own, he cut off his connection to infinite wisdom and infinite knowledge. He didn't know the future. He can't read the Bible the way I do. He didn't know the story and how God had a plan of salvation in place already. And had he gone to God first, he could have enlightened him and let him know, and maybe worked with him to remedy the situation with Eve, and God and Adam could have worked together with Eve. I don't know how that would have gone, because that's not how it happened. But I do know that my life prior to a few years ago, I didn't want to go to God with my path because I thought his path was different than mine. So I spent my life trying to build the life I wanted. And all it did was lead me from one dead end to another. And I know now that God knows the best path for me, not just for me, but for everyone around me. God's work is in salvation, and the more I trust him and give him my heart and give him my life, he's going to lead me to the path that is most enlightening for my character, for my heart to grow in love, and for the life and experience of others around me to grow in that too. God knows every single person that is around me, my family, the hearts. He knows everything at the most infinite level that I can't even comprehend. He knows so much more than I do. And it's silly for me at this point to try to make a plan without the Lord, because I know that any plan that I make is going to fall short of the plan that will happen if I trust in him. And I also know that salvation doesn't always bring the happiest outcome. I mean, if you look at Jesus, he is the only begotten. He's the only one that lived without sin, and he trusted the Father completely. Jesus is different from me. I will always cycle through a 4-step process, because I know that I am deceived by the serpent. And I know that even the closer and closer I come to the Lord, I still live in a world of sin and still have deceptions happening all the time. And there's still things that I have to work through to understand where my view of God is out of harmony with his true character of love. So, so I go through the process of judge, to know, to trust, to surrender. Whereas Jesus never judged. He never believed any of the serpent's lies. He never judged a single person. He never judged God. He only ever came to know the Father, to trust the Father, and to surrender to the Father. So he went through a 3-step cycle, whereas I will always go through a 4-step cycle. And that is just a tiny glimpse of the difference between me and Jesus. But Jesus trusted the Father completely, had the best relationship that anyone that lived a human existence has ever had with the Lord. And he lived a life that most humans wouldn't aspire to. Jesus was nearly homeless. He lived a life of service his whole life and was dependent on the kindness and love of others. And he was heavily persecuted, rejected, and denied by his own people, and eventually brutally tortured and murdered by the fallen nature of humanity. So I know that trusting in the Lord, and you look at all the prophets throughout the Bible too, many of them had some similar and hard circumstances and endings, as well as the disciples. So I know that path with the Lord oftentimes leads to persecution, because we live in a world that has a fallen nature, and as people don't trust God and judge God the way I used to, hearts harden, and people are capable of cruelty and sadness and death and disease, and all these things exist in our world. And as people are mean to each other, it's just a sign of the symptom that their hearts don't know the love of God. And but anyways, Jesus trusted the Father completely, because he knew that in so doing, the greatest work of salvation would occur. And Jesus came to conquer sin and to conquer death and to achieve what is necessary, not just for salvation, but for eternal salvation. And only through revealing the true character of God, our Father in heaven, and the Holy Spirit could the truth of who God is be revealed. And that's why it's so important to study Jesus' life. I know the more I study his life, the more truth will be revealed, and the more I truly see who God is, it will cause me to stop judging God incorrectly. It'll stop me to stop seeing God through the lens of the serpent, through the way that Satan perceives and sees God and wants me to see him too, which is nothing more than a lie. I know the closer I draw to the Lord, the more I will grow in love, and the more I will love everyone, no matter their identity, no matter their character. Only through love can someone who is cruel see who God is. I know that if anyone is cruel or mean, or they just don't know, because that used to be me in many respects. I didn't get it. I didn't understand who God was, and I was seeing God through Satan's view. My heart was hardening. I didn't even believe in Satan. Honestly, I did not think he was real. But all that did was help me draw closer to him and draw further away from God. So I'm so grateful that I finally know who God is, and that I completely trust him as much as I know how to at this point, and that I am working to surrender my entire heart to him, because I want nothing more than for the hearts and minds of everyone around the world to come to know the love of God, come to know the true character of God, the God who created everyone and loves everyone and is only working to heal and save people. On the top of that cross, Jesus was the one who did not harm anyone. He was the one who forgave everyone. And he was the one who offered his life for the salvation of all. He is the truth. He said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man enter to the Father but by me. Because only as I come to study and know him do I really come to know who the Father is and what love is. And that is how the Lord is healing me. Once I opened the Bible at the age of 37 and came to start studying Jesus, after going through the amazing and miraculous experience of becoming a mother, and happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. It is the most wonderful privilege to share the experience of creation, to have a life grow inside of your body, and to see your baby born in your image. It gives us a tiny glimpse of the majesty and magnitude of God, and what a privilege it is to be a mother. That changed me so much. And then looking to Jesus Christ, my Creator, Redeemer, and Savior on that cross, and seeing the true character of love and the true character of God, that is how I come to know love. That is how I come to know the source of where my children came from. That is where I come to know the source of where this changed heart and this changed mind have come from, because I know the person I was. I know the thoughts in my head. I love all the people in my life from the old life I lived. I don't have any issues with the people or the relationships. I know my shortcomings, and I know the thoughts in my head and the desires in my heart and what they were on my own versus what they are now. And the love I had for anyone back then is only extremely magnified with the love I have now with the Lord in my heart. So anyways, that is my testimony on the last day of my 38th year, and I'm so excited to share my testimony again next year. and I'm excited for the year ahead, and I'm so grateful for my life, and I'm so grateful for my husband, for him coming in and making me a mom, and for giving me the gift of my children. And I thank you. Huge thank you to God, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit for all the work they've done in my heart, and for saving me, for healing me, and for giving me the chance to go and sin no more.